going to be working on combining fractions with unlike denominators. In other words, unlike fractions, adding and subtracting unlike fractions. I'm going to start with number 19 because I'm going to do the odds. You're going to do the evens. We've got 4/5 minus 1/6. We have to find a common denominator of 5 and 6. Well, the bigger number 6, I could take 6 times 2 make 12. 5 does not go into that. I could take 6 times 3 and make 18. 5 does not go into that. Take 6 times 4 and make 24. 5 does not go into that. I take 6 times 5, and that makes 30. So that means I have to multiply the numbers to each other. So in this sense, I've got 4/5 that I will have to multiply by 6 in order to get my denominator to be 30. But whatever I do to the top, I must do to the bottom. That means I'm going to get 4 times 6, which is 24, over 5 times 6, which is 30. Now, let's work on negative 1/6. We have to multiply that to 5 because we said that was the number that we would have to get to multiply to 6 to get 30. So on this side over here, we're going to have negative 1/6 times 5/5. Remember, whatever I multiply to the bottom, I must multiply to the top. All right? So that means this is going to be negative 1 times 5, which is negative 5. And 6 times 5 is 30. As you can see now, we have our denominators that are the same, which allows us to go ahead and subtract 24 minus 5. 24 minus 5 is going to be, well, I believe that's 19, because 19 plus 5 will give us 24. So answer should be 19/30. That cannot be reduced, so that will be our final answer. Our next number that we're going to do is number 21. Remember, I'm doing all the odds. This time we have 3/10 minus negative 1/4. Again, we have to find a common denominator between 10 and 4. But before we combine them, let's see what we've got to do. We've got a negative on one side and a negative on the other of this parentheses. We know parentheses means we will be multiplying. So this is a negative, and once again, we could pretend there's a 1 after that negative. So negative 1 times negative 1/4. Well, negative times a negative makes a positive. So this is actually going to equal 3/10 plus 1/4. But again, the denominators are not the same. They're unlike fractions, which means I've got to find a way to make them alike. Let's start with 10. Well, 10 times 1, can 4 go into that? No. 10 times 2 is 20. Can 4 go into 20? Yes. 5 times 4 is 20. So we're going to remember that we could take 10 times 2 and get 20, and 4 times 5 and get 20. So let's work from that. First of all, if I have 3/10, and I multiply that bottom number by 2 to get 20, I have to multiply the top number by 2 to get 20. 3 times 2 is 6, and 10 times 2 is 20. We're not going to go ahead and reduce this at all because we want the denominators to stay at 20. Now let's go ahead and look at 1/4. Remember, we said we would have to multiply 5 to 4 to get 20. Well, if I multiply the bottom number to 20, I have to multiply the top number to 20. 1 times 5, or excuse me, if I have to multiply the bottom number by 5, I have to multiply the top number by 5. Sorry about that. 4 times 5 is 20. And we had a positive 1 times 5. Well, 1 times 5 is 5. And since this was a positive, it will stay positive. Now we have 6 plus 5, or 6 over 20 plus 5 over 20. Since the denominators are now the same, we have like fractions, which means we are allowed to go ahead and keep the denominator the same and add the top numerator. 6 plus 5 is 11. Our answer is 11 over 20, and we can't reduce that. Sounds like a good time to put our code word in. I'm going to go ahead and put the code word in. It is smart water. For those of you looking for a treat, make sure you put smart water as your code word, and you'll receive one. Yes, I have a bottle of smart water sitting in front of me right now. All right, let's go on to number 23. I'm going to erase the smart water from here to make sure the people that are just trying to look at the video at the end do not go ahead and get the code word. You will have to actually listen to the video to get it. All right, number 23 says negative 7 over 8 plus 1/3. Well, 8 is the bigger number. So 8 times 1 is 8. 3 cannot multiply to anything to get 8. 8 times 2 is 16. Again, I cannot multiply 3 to anything to get 16, which means I need 8 times 3, which would be 24. And of course, that would make me multiply 3 by 8 to get 24. So let's get down to business. We have negative 7 over 8. We said we need to multiply the bottom number by 3 to get 24. But if I multiply the bottom number by 3, I have to multiply the top number by 3. Negative 7 times 3 is negative 21. And 8 times 3 is 24. We have our new fraction, negative 21 over 24. Now, on number 23, we can see that the second number is a positive 1/3. 1/3. And we said in order to get 24 as a denominator, I have to multiply 3 to 8. But if I multiply the bottom by 8, I have to multiply the top by 8. Remember, I'm into equality. We've got to go ahead and treat the bottom and top the same. Well, 1 times 8, and remember these are positive numbers because this was a positive 1. 1 times 8 is 8, and 3 times 8 is 24. Now we have negative 21 plus 8. Why? Because my denominators are the same. And my rule for like fractions is if my denominator is the same, all I have to do is add or subtract my numerators to get my answer. So my bottom number, my denominator, is to be 24. Negative 21 plus 8. Well, what would I have to go ahead and add to 21 to get to 8? Let's think about this for a minute. I have negative 21. Now I'm going to add 8 to it. If I was going on the number line, I'd be going to the right, right? If this was my number line, and this was negative 21, I now have to go in this direction by 8 in order to go ahead and find my answer. Because this is a positive number, I'll head in the positive number direction. Well, we know that 20 minus 8 is 12, so 21 minus 8 is going to be 13. And that would be a negative 13. And remember the rule, whenever I have two numbers with unlike signs, I take the big number minus the small number, and I keep the sign of the big number, right? So I would borrow one here, and 8, 9, 10, 11. That would be negative 13. You see how we got that number? All right, so my answer would be negative 13 over 24. And that cannot be reduced. All right, we got the first three out of the way. Why don't we go ahead and work on number 25 now? 25 says, Michaela bought 1/4 pound of ham and 5/8 pound of turkey. How much more turkey did she buy? Okay, Michaela bought 1/4 pound of ham, 5/8 pound of turkey, and we want to know how much more turkey did she buy. This sounds like a subtraction problem. I want to know how much more. I got to find the difference. Okay, how much more turkey did she buy than how much more turkey did she buy? All right, so basically I've got, and I have to listen to those words carefully, how much more turkey, which means I know that 5/8 is going to be more. So this is 5/8 minus 1/4. And now I see again, my denominators are not the same. I've got to go ahead and create a way for them to be the same by finding the least common factor. Okay, so, or greatest common factor. So I have 8 and 4. Well, 8 times 1 is 8, and 4 times 2 is 8. So I can use 8 as a denominator. So I'm going to leave 5 over 8 because in all actuality, if I was to go ahead and do this, I would be putting 5 times 1 and let's see, my denominator was 8, and I said I was going to multiply it by 1, right? So 5 times 1 is 5, and 8 times 1 is 8. You see, I end up with the same number. So now I'm going to work over here with the negative 1/4. Okay, I got negative 1/4. But in order to make 4/8, my denominator, if I want it to be 8, I have to multiply it to 2. But whatever I multiply on the bottom by 2, to multiply on the top by 2. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. And 4 times 2 is 8. And now you see I have my denominators the same. Since I do have like fractions now, I can simply subtract one numerator from the other. 5 minus 2 is 3. So I know that I have 3/8 more pound of turkey than I do of ham. Okay, so I'm going to type that in. I have 3/8 more turkey than ham. And that would be my answer. All right, we're going to number 27 to finish this off. Find the error. Teresa is finding 1/4 plus 3/5. Okay, find her mistake and correct it. Explain your answer. Well, she says 1/4 plus 3/5 equals 1 plus 3 and 4 plus 5. Now we know this isn't true because in order to combine unlike fractions, we have to go ahead and make the denominators the same. So if she's asking us to add these together, we have to remember we have 1/4 plus 3/5, and we have to find the greatest common factor so we can have the same denominator. Well, 5 is the bigger number. 5 times 1 is 5. We can't put 4 into 5. 5 times 2 is 10. I can't put 4 into 10 either. 5 times 3 is 15, and I can't put 4 into 15. But 5 times 4 is 20. As you can see, we're going to have to multiply these numbers to each other to get the common denominator. So let's work it. We've got 1 over 4, and we said to make 20, we'd have to multiply 4 by 5. And that means we're going to have to multiply 1 by 5 as well. That's going to give us 5 over 20. Now, to get 3/5 with the denominator 20, we have to take 3/5, and remember that we need to multiply 4 to 5 to get 20, but whatever I multiply on the top, I must multiply on the bottom and vice versa, which means I have 3 times 4, and that's 12, and 5 times 4, that's 20. And remember, this was a positive number, so we'll put a positive sign there. And now that our denominator is the same, we have two like fractions, so we can keep our denominator the same in our answer. And now we can go ahead and add the top. 5 plus 12, well, that's 17. So our answer would be 17 over 20. And that's where she made a mistake. She went ahead and tried to add the denominators together. She can't do that. She has to find the greatest common factor. And I believe that's all the problems for today. Good luck with your homework, and see you in class.